Hi, everybody. Today's Tuesday, March 10th, 2026, and our dear friend, Professor Marandi, is here with us. Welcome back, Professor.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's always an honor.
Professor Marandi, there is a very great moment in Iran. We have a new leader in Iran. And many people in the West, they don't know who's the new leader of Iran and what is the policy under his administration. What can you tell us to understand what is the policy of Iran under his leadership, and is that less flexible, more flexible? Is that similar to what his father was doing before being martyred by the Israeli American attack? What can we learn from his policies, and what, because there is no video, not much of footage of him out to understand his position. Your take on that.
He is a religious scholar. He has studied high levels, like the um, um, he's taught high-ranking religious students for 20 years, and he's also, besides religious university and the seminary, he's also studied at university. He he's fluent in Arabic and in English. I don't know about his Azeri because his father is fluent in Azeri. He he worked in his father's office for many years. All of Ayatollah Khamenei's children are low profile, as you know. You never see them on television. You never see them in public activities. Sometimes, for example, if there are demonstrations, some of the private news agencies will show them if they're participating with their wives and children, for example, in a rally or something. But most people would not know them if they see them on the streets, any of his children. And he, of course, himself included. None of Ayatollah Khamenei's, the martyr Ayatollah Khamenei's children are in any business. They have no businesses. And not that Ayatollah Khamenei is against business, but he believes that the people around him, affiliated to him, should refrain from any form of business. And so none of his children, including Ayatollah Sayyid Mujtaba Khamenei, have any businesses. But he has been, he's very knowledgeable about policies, about his connections with key political and military figures is very strong because he's been working in his father's office for all these years. He's been an aide to his father for all these years. I would assume that we are going to have continuity. His ideas are similar to his father's. But Iran has changed, Nima. It's, you know, after two wars in a row where the United States tried to deceive Iranians and then carried out a sudden attack, and after the martyrdom of all these children, I mean, just a couple of hours ago, they bombed highways in Tehran. And they've been bombing schools, they've been bombing hospitals, they've been bombing the Iranian radio and television multiple times. I was invited for a program, and I went there, and I saw that the building that I had gone to in the past for the news channel, that it was bombed. And so they took me to another building after I did my interview and left. An hour later, they bombed the complex again. So, this is what Iranian people are up against. And there were some extraordinary scenes. I mean, there have been extraordinary scenes across Iran for 10 days now. People every night, in the many millions, tens of millions, go out on the streets across the country and in Tehran as well, in defiance of the United States. in defiance of Trump, in defiance of this Western war against Iran, where all its regional proxies are complicit. And yesterday I was witness to this extraordinary event. I went to Engelab Square. I wasn't near the square because it was very crowded, but I was to the east of the campus of the University of Tehran on Engelab Street, like well, yeah, to the east of the University of Tehran on Engelab. And then with all those people on the streets who are carried out an enormous airstrike on Tehran. And
Professor Marandi, we've lost you just for some moment. You've mentioned with all those people on the street, then we didn't hear.
Yes. Yeah, so I was there, and I was on Engelab Street to the east of the University of Tehran, in the crowd. And so the crowds were there to support the new leader and in defiance of the Trump regime and the Epstein coalition. And then they started bombing Tehran. And it was a heavy airstrike, and it was not far off. And no one moved. No one, men, women, children. It was just amazing. I've never seen such a thing, even on video or anywhere else in the world. They all started chanting that the saying of Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura, the grandson of the Prophet in Karbala, when he was about to be martyred. He said, "Far away are we from humiliation," or "We are far from humiliation." In other words, we will never accept humiliation. And it was just amazing for me to see all those women and children and men, they wouldn't budge. Amazing. How is the United States ever going to defeat such a people? It's not possible. If US analysts and experts, if these so-called Iran experts who hate Iran so much and hate Iranian culture so much, extraordinary culture and cultured people were being bombed day and night. If they'd read about Imam Hussein and Ashura, they would have refrained from attacking Iran. They would have recognized that this is not a winnable war. But in any case, it's sad to see how evil the West is when Trump speaks about, it's nice to sink ships instead of taking them, and the audience laughs. It's a disgusting regime, disgusting with their disgusting journalists and their disgusting media. It's just irredeemable. Nima, in Iran, I mean, this is anecdotal, but like, women are afraid of taking a shower. They don't want, if they're afraid that if the house is bombed, that they won't have their clothes on. I mean, how evil and sinister can the regime in Washington be? How evil and sinister can these Western journalists and pundits and think tankers be? How cowardly and animal-like are they? They're not animals, they're beneath animals. But in any case, the steadfastness of Iranians is extraordinary. And I think all the lies and the misinformation of Trump and his allies are coming out. They said, if you recall, after 3-4 days, they said that Iranian missiles and drones are diminishing in quantity. I don't know if you recall, they put out this graph, and Iran is striking them day and night in Palestine, in occupied Palestine, across the Persian Gulf region. They're hammering them. And they've shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and they will not allow a drop of oil to leave until the war comes to an end. Not a ceasefire. Iran will not accept a ceasefire. The war must end on terms that are acceptable to Iran, and those terms must be as such that in future the United States can no longer threaten Iran. The region can no longer be used as a series of military bases to strike Iran. The Arab dictatorships in the Persian Gulf region, they either must go or they must change completely. They will have to compensate for the crimes that they helped carry out. They're not neutral. And they will have to provide an environment where Iran no longer feels threatened. Period. So that is going to change. And with the Trump regime now, you see making all these contradictory statements. 1 minute he's saying that the war is about to end. The next he says he's going to destroy the Iranian nation. He's going to destroy the Iranian nation. It's amazing. And then there's no outrage in the West. And these so-called Iranians in the United States who rallied for Trump, and in Canada, these fools or these criminals, many of them are on the payroll. You know this as well as I. There are hundreds of Iranian TV channels in the West funded by Western intelligence. There are troll farms. I don't want to go there, but a lot of these people are mercenaries. They're mercenaries and their families, and some fools. But the fact is that Trump has said it openly that he will destroy. Well, he can't, but he will destroy Iran, the nation. And there's no moral outrage. You don't see Western journalists in The Guardian saying this is a war criminal, he must be arrested. You don't see that in Fox News or CNN, because the elites in the United States have no morality. In Europe, they have no morality, and they have no moral compass, and they're cowardly.
Professor Marandi, you mentioned they're bombing, highways. We've learned from the Iran's Red Crescent that they have bombed so far 77 medical centers across Iran. And looking at the current situation and the targets and that they're hitting, do you think that do they have any strategy, or they're just making a lot of suffering for the Iranian people? They're trying to do their best to destroy those people. It's so ridiculous for those people who were arguing, before that Donald Trump himself, he was saying that I'm going to liberate Iranian people. I am going to attack them. You see that they're attacking Iranian people. They're not attacking anything else. They don't have intelligence, because before this war started, they said that we have a lot of intelligence. We know the strategic, parts of Iran. We're going to hit them. But the outcome from what we've seen so far, we have CNN reporters in Iran reporting what is happening right now. We have Iranian officials reporting that they're hitting civilians.
Nima, they know what they're doing. All these hospitals, all these medical centers, they can be found online. You can use the Iranian apps, you can use Google Map, you can use China, they're all known entities. All the schools, all the hospital, all the local police stations, all the ambulance centers, the emergency centers, the Red Crescent Society, which itself has been bombed. These are intentional. These are not unintentional. These are intentional. Why? They have failed. Well, first of all, they're barbaric and they're genocidal. Remember, the U.S. ambassador to occupied Palestine said that, and so do many Americans, say that, elites, say that the Israelis are the most moral army in the world. So for the regime in Washington, the standard of morality, they don't care about. They are angry that they have failed to defeat Iran's forces, the guard, the volunteers, the police, everyone, that they've succeeded in defeating them. They cannot do anything about Iran's missile and drone capabilities. Iran is, after all this period of, after 12 days now, The Iranians are pounding them day and night. So they're frustrated. They're upset. And what do? They take their revenge on people. They try to create fear and terror so that people are afraid. Women and children are terrified. Mothers are terrified for their daughters. Men, this is what they want. That is why they carried out those heavy airstrikes during the rally yesterday. They wanted to terrorize those people, to create some sort of stampede, to humiliate them. But the opposite happened. The world, and now the opposite is happening across the world. The world stands with Iran. Western media, whether it's the liberals or the so-called left or the so-called conservatives, it's the Epstein media, all of them. They cannot hide the reality. The 40-year-old narrative on Iran is collapsing. People are recognizing who is evil and who is good. Iran's sin is that it says no to genocide. Iran's sin is that it says no to ethno-supremacism. That's what all these wars are about. That is what all these terror attacks and the sending of terrorists into Iran, that's what it's all about. That is what all the sanctions, the barbaric maximum pressure sanctions are. While Iran stands for the people of Gaza, the people of Cuba, the regimes in our region, from Erdogan to Sisi to Mohammed bin Zayed to Mohammed bin Salman and the rest, they all stand with Trump. They all stand with the Epstein coalition. As we speak right now, Iran has taken out almost all of the US radar systems in the region, in the Persian Gulf. Turkey is helping the Americans and the Israelis right now through a radar installation in Turkey to deal with Iranian missile strikes, drone strikes, to help them carry out attacks on Iran. This is the broader Epstein coalition that we're dealing with.
One of the main strategic points so far on the part of the Iranian army was to attack all these radars in the Persian Gulf. Somehow the Israelis, together with the United States, they're somehow blind, because the early warning system is not working anymore. They have a short time to go to the safe places that the Israeli government has defined for them. But after all, it doesn't seem that it could be a sustainable situation for Israelis, because what can you say about the intensity and the strategic moves on the part of the Iranian army today, IRGC together with the army, in terms of the attacks? You've mentioned the number of missiles have been reduced. The number has been reduced, but how about the targets? Are they getting the same targets? Do they need to do the same as they were doing, in the initial days of the conflict, or they were reduced by intention, on purpose?
Well, the number of missiles were reduced after the first 3-4 days because Iran was sending large waves of older missiles and drones to take out the air defense systems and to empty their surface-to-air missiles. The missiles that Iran was using for the first week or 8 days were almost, or 8 or 9 days, 8 days, let's say. I'm not sure about that now, but were almost exclusively, and the drones were almost exclusively made like 15, 20 years ago. And then after Iran was able to take out all the radar installations, or most of the radar installations, and was able to empty the surface-to-air missile systems, then they started using not the latest technology, but missiles that were built like a bit over a decade ago. And they were all getting through, or mostly getting through. And of course, Iranian missiles and drones have been doing the same across the Persian Gulf against US assets. Not just the US bases, but anything that can be defined as a U.S. asset. And that definition will broaden. If the targeting of Iranian infrastructure and the slaughter of ordinary people continue, since all of these regions and all of these regimes in the region, these Arab family dictatorships are complicit, then Iran will have to retaliate. I mean, they've struck desalination plants in Iran. I mean, if they're going to go there, if Iran is forced to do that, since these regimes and the U.S. occupation forces in these Arab countries are completely dependent on desalination plants, they would leave the Arabian Peninsula. They'll have to take refuge in Yemen or in Iraq. So this is a stupid path to take, and these regimes are allowing the United States to do it. We've already seen signs that the United States is using even their territory to fire missiles, not their aircraft. Attack missiles are being fired from countries in the Persian Gulf. For example, you saw 3 Americans were this because they're using these countries. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, all of them. Don't believe a word that they say. So if the United States increases, or if the United States escalates, Iran can escalate far more than the United States, because the assets that exist in the Persian Gulf region in these in these family regimes are very valuable to the West. All those refineries, all those petrochemical plants, all those oil and gas fields, all of those tankers and ports. This will devastate the United States. The price of oil will go through the roof. The price of gas will go through the roof. And even if there's a halt in hostilities, there will be nothing to take out of the Persian Gulf. And there will be nothing to take anything out of the Persian Gulf. There'll be no tankers. And the United States is already hurting. I mean, not only has the price of oil gone up, and it will continue to go up, even though they tried to manipulate it yesterday, but because every day 20 million barrels of oil is missing from the market. 20 million is being added every day to the amount of oil that is missing that no longer exists for consumers. So after, let's say, 11 days, you have, or let's say 10 days, I don't know when we shut down the strike, let's say 10 days, it's maybe a bit more than 10 days. But after 10 days, that means 200 million barrels of oil is not on the market that was supposed to be there. And then that oil is overwhelmingly sold in dollars. And a lot of that money goes to the US stock exchange, or to buy US treasuries, or to buy US weapons, because these Arab regimes, they purchase huge amounts of weapons. They don't even know how to use them. They don't even have the people they don't even have the pilots to fly the planes, let alone anything else. They just buy them because they get kickbacks, the princes, and so do US senators, and you know how it works, or European. So the arms industry is hurting. The stock exchange will hurt. The consumption that comes from I mean, there's so many layers of hurt that Iran can impose on the West. But the ultimate hurt will be the collapse of Western economies. And that is in the cards. That is doable. It will happen if they escalate and try to open the Strait of Hormuz by force, or if they try to destroy infrastructure, key infrastructure. That will happen. They cannot win this war. Iran is determined to make sure that this war ends in a way in which Iranian security for the future is dealt with, that these issues are resolved, that the United States can no longer threaten Iran in the future. Iran's security is secured for the decades to come. And the same is true with Iran's allies across the region. The United States will not be able to have to end this without issues across the region being dealt with in one form or another. This is going to end in a strategic defeat for the United States and, by extension, of course, the Israeli regime. No doubt.
There was a phone call between, the foreign minister of Japan called Arakchi, the Iranian foreign minister. What are they asking for? What is the problem? We know that Japan was, the reality of the Strait of Hormuz has hit the economy of Japan, and they're one of the most dependent countries when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. More than 90% of their energy comes from the Strait of Hormuz. But what is the policy? What was the response on the part of Iranians to Japanese foreign minister?
Nima, you've been doing this program for a couple of years at least, right? I don't know how long it began. We've been on talking for a very long time, maybe a couple of years now. You have many guests on your shows. I think people who watch your show, not just you and I, but the others, they knew this was going to happen. They knew that if the United States attacked Iran, that Iran would strike back across the board. So your community of viewers who watch your other guests, and you have better guests than I, they were expecting this. How in the world is it that Trump, after the start of the war, says, I was surprised that Iran struck back at the Persian Gulf region? That shows the utter ignorance of the elites in Washington. And maybe those who did know a thing or two, they hid it because they're Israeli firsters. They don't care about American interests or the global economy. They care about Zionism. Right now, do you hear the bombs? Anyway, so they don't care about the economy. They don't care about the Japanese economy. The Israeli regime, and the Israeli firsters who run the United States, they don't care about Japan's economy. I don't know, did you hear? Big explosion in our neighborhood. This is like in the neighborhood that I'm in right now. This is these are all homes. These are all, anyway. So the Israeli regime and the Americans, they are the ones who created this crisis. So when the Japanese foreign minister communicates and contacts the Iranians, of course he's worried about his economy because they're extremely dependent. And of course, even worse than Japan is India. And the Indian prime minister made the foolish miscalculation of aligning himself with Netanyahu. They don't have oil reserve. They don't have a strategic reserve. I don't know if you can hear the explosions. They don't have an strategic reserves. Japan does. So India is going to be hit very hard, more than Japan. But the point is that when they contact Iran, what do you expect the answer to be? Okay, we'll accept a ceasefire? Of course not. We're not going to allow them to regroup and then attack us 8 months from now again, pretend to have negotiations and then bomb us again. It's not going to happen. It's finished. We'd be fools to accept that. So he can call all the G7 foreign ministers can call the prime ministers, and they can all call. It doesn't make a difference. This war will end with a fundamental change in our region. The United States and its proxies will no longer be able to threaten us the way they did before. And that includes Iran's allies. Will this be the end? But it will be an enormous change. And the United States will be a diminished empire. No doubt. This is a turning point. So it really doesn't matter what the Japanese foreign minister says. Iran's fundamental demands won't change. Iran is very self-confident. Iran is striking back with intensity. The strikes in the last 2-3 days have been very intense across the board, and the Americans can do nothing about it. That's why they kill so many people. That's why they murder and slaughter children and infants across Iran. So they can contact Iran and they can attempt to assault Iran to take the Strait of Hormuz, it won't work. It will make things far worse for them. It will make it permanently worse. Because if the war ends without the destruction of the oil and gas facilities across the region and the Caucasus, there will be permanent harm to the global economy, but it will continue to function. But if push comes to shove, that will be it. We will have a global economic depression like nothing that people in the last couple of centuries have ever seen.
We had Iran, the head of the Iran National Security Council, Ali Larijani. He said that the Strait of Hormuz will either be a strait of peace and prosperity for all, or will be a strait of defeat and suffering for warmongers. And Professor Marandi, do you think that...
And he tweeted that in multiple languages. Dr. Larijani tweeted that in multiple languages.
Yeah, exactly. What is the message? Because we had one of the officials in Iran, Kamal Kharrazi, many people know him because he was one of the main advisors of the Supreme Leader of Iran. And he is the advisor, I would assume, to the new leader of Iran. He said that negotiations is not anymore the solution on the part of Iranians because they don't trust the Americans to negotiate with. What is your understanding? What do you make of what he said on CNN, interview he had on CNN?
The facts on the ground have to change. The facts on the ground across the region have to change. In these Arab family dictatorships, the Emirates, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, in Iraq as well, in northern Iraq, in the Republic of Azerbaijan, the facts on the ground have to change. Iran will no longer tolerate threats. It will no longer tolerate collaboration with the Israeli regime or the Trump regime that can lead to national security problems for the country. So negotiating with the United States, why should we even talk to them? They're liars. They break their promises. They're deceitful. There's nothing you cannot negotiate with the Trump regime. If he says he'll do A tomorrow, will he do it? Will he do it? No, negotiating with him is for the fools to do. What has to happen is the facts on the ground have to be as such that the Iranians are satisfied. And that will be a big change. So it's no longer a piece of paper, no longer promises from the White House. Their paper is worthless, their promises are worthless, they are worthless. But the facts on the ground will determine when the war comes to an end.
From what we've learned from the Iranian president, he's preparing the economy for a long war. The economy is entering the same, we had it during the war between Iran and Iraq. The people know how it works, and most of the people who are right now in charge, responsible for the policies, for implementing the policies, making the policies, are the same people who were in the war between Iraq and you yourself was in that war. And you understand what is going on and how the economy is preparing itself for a long war.
Nima, you know Iran. Iran has 15, Iran has 15 neighbors. I think the attack on the refinery that they did, and which spread poisonous material across Tehran, it's a chemical attack against the Iranian people. I think my cough has been intensified because of that. And it causes cancer. They've sent messages to people who were injured during the war from chemical weapons, the chemical weapons that the West gave to Saddam, not to go out. So, so I think my cough is worse because of this. So I apologize. It's like the third or fourth time I've coughed. Iran has 15 neighbors. It can import and export what it needs from the north, from the west, and from the east. There's nothing that the Americans can do about it. And it will be tough. I have no doubt. We have no doubt that the life will become more difficult as time goes on. But we have no option. We have to change the facts on the ground. So the economy will function. It will get more difficult for all of us, no doubt. And people will die. The US will continue to target women and children to create terror. And of course, the Zionist regime always does that. But we will continue until we get what we want, what we demand. So Iran is a country the size of France, Germany, and the UK combined. And the three combined. How is the United States going to strangle us? It's not doable. We will be able to get what we need, whether it's food or whether it's some weapons or other supplies. We will be able to get what we need for this period. And the war will come to an end. We're prepared for a very long war, but it will come to an end because the United States cannot continue this for much longer. It may take a few weeks, maybe a few months, but this is not sustainable. The US economy is in bad shape. The political situation in the United States is not good. The expenditure is probably at least $2 or $3 billion a day. I mean, they have to bring all their needs from the United States all the way to our part of the world every day. And they're firing off missiles and drones, and they're being downed and fighting like there's no tomorrow. They're spending huge amounts of jet fuel, which, of course, where do you think that jet fuel is being? Who's providing it to them? I mean, Erdogan is providing the oil for and Aliyev the oil for Netanyahu to wage his wars and to produce his own jet fuel. But who's giving the U.S. all this jet fuel for it, to carry out its air raids? That's something that will probably have to be dealt with. But the point is that for the United States, the cost of war, direct and indirect, is enormous, and it's a war of choice. For Iran, it's a war of survival, and Iran has many means to sustain itself until it defeats the enemy.
As we talk, there is a video that came out from Netanyahu. He's talking about it. Still, it's amazing that see how delusional these people are. He's talking about Iranian people coming out and helping Israel and the United States. And we know that's a desperate talk and move on their part. On the other hand, Professor Marandi, I think what they're dreaming.
Just before you continue, I just want to. It's not just Netanyahu. That's the Guardian. That's the Independent. That's the Times newspaper in London. That is the Washington Post. That's the New York Times. They all lie to their audiences and say the Iranian people. The Iranian people were never on their side. The Iranian people never supported them. The Iranian people never supported the terrorists and the murderers. The Iranian people supported the Islamic Republic of Iran. All of them lie. It's not just Netanyahu. Netanyahu is just more crude, like Trump. But the others are no different. They justify war by creating these narratives that they want to save Iranian people. Even those who are against war, they also help enable the war by demonizing Iran, by lying about Iranian society. But now look, under airstrikes, people are on the streets. They bombed nearby in Isfahan. I posted a picture. People were protesting, and you can see the explosion nearby, but they stand their ground. But the West doesn't show you that. Western media doesn't. So they're no different from Netanyahu. Sorry, I interrupted.
On the other hand, what the dream is on the part of basically Donald Trump is that the Kurdish people would do something in favor. We've learned from Reuters that the Kurdish people in Syria, they said to the Kurdish people, in Iraq, that they're not happy with what they have received from the Americans, because the Americans somehow betrayed them in Syria, and they're giving their understanding to their, as we call it, to the Turkish Iraqi Kurdistan. How is that going to be a big problem for Iran to confront these people coming across from Iraq? And how much of the problem is that? Is that a big problem? Is that an issue that could be dealt regionally, or the state should decide about it?
First of all, Iranian Kurds, their relationship with Iran is historically very different from the relationship between the Kurds in Turkey or Iraq with their governments. The bond is much stronger. Let me give you an example. When Saddam Hussein carried out that famous, I think, Anfal operation, I think that's what it was called, against the Kurds in northern Iraq, 2 million Kurds fled to Turkey and 2 million fled to Iran. The Iranians opened their borders. All of them came into Iran. They were free to come into Iran. Iraqi Kurds. In Turkey, they closed the borders and they wouldn't allow any of them to enter. They were stuck on the border inside Iraq. The relationship is completely different. Let alone that, when the Iranians treat Iraqi Kurds like that, imagine the relationship inside Iran. The relationship is deep, religious, cultural. Nowruz is a holiday for Azeris and the Republic of Azerbaijan and Kurds in Iraq, as well as across Iran. So the Azeris are Shia too, and many in the Republic of Azerbaijan want to have very close relations with Iran. Many want to be a part of Iran, and many Iranians also want the Republic of Azerbaijan to be a part of Iran, or at least have close relations. That's not Iran's government policy, but Azeris in Iran, if you ask them, they wanted to return to Iran. So the bonds that exist among Iranians are very strong. And the West, if they push the Kurdish terror groups and their proxies in Iraqi Kurdistan to support these terror groups, the only thing that will happen is that Iraq and end the government in northern Iraq.
Yeah, Professor Marandi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Could you? We didn't hear you. The last sentence. If it happens, what would?
If the terror groups, the Kurdish terror groups, based in Iraq, in northern Iraq, and the autonomous Kurdish government of northern Iraq assist the Americans and attack Iran, what will happen is that the Iranian armed forces and the Iraqi resistance and the Iraqi armed forces will put an end to the autonomous government in northern Iraq. It'll be over. So they will be the big losers. The Barazani family gang, the mafia in charge of northern Iraq, they'll be gone. So it's not a winning situation. The same is true with the Republic of Azerbaijan. The Iranians have warned Aliyev to stop assisting the Israeli regime. And if something happens, he will fall immediately. He doesn't have a chance in the world. And the people in his country will, a decent government will take power. The people will come to power. So it's in their own interest to back off and to to refrain from destroying their own, their lives and their own prosperity. These regimes, it's best to preserve it rather than to obey the United States. And does the United States is it faithful to its friends? What did it? It sold its allies in Syria. Even now in the Persian Gulf, we see that these elites that are close to the royal families, they are saying that the United States doesn't care about us. They're only protecting the Israeli regime. So the United States will send people to their deaths, but when things go bad, they won't help them. When they're losing, when they're being defeated, they'll just walk away. That's how the United States has always been. So I don't feel any concern about the Republic of Azerbaijan or Northern Iraq.
What do you make of Donald Trump's comments on the new supreme leader of Iran? He said he's not happy with that. And this is not the first time. We have a long history of Iran dealing with this sort of mindset, going back to Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953. And right now in 2026, it's so strange that a country, he's not even that important to decide about New York City. And he's talking about the president of Iran. Who's going to be the president? Who's going to be the supreme leader of Iran? Who's good for that position? Who is Donald Trump to decide about what? How does Iran see the comments, these strange comments on the part of the president of the United States?
Well, this is an empire. You saw the U.S. Secretary of State at Davos talk about how great empire was. I think if you live in Brazil, Latin Americans know exactly what the conquistadors did to them during those 500 years. And what has happened to Africa, the plunder of Africa, and across Asia, the Opium Wars. This is what the U.S. Secretary of State likes. And of course, you can tell he's sincere because he likes the genocide in Gaza. He likes bombing Iranians. So he was saying that the 500 years of colonization, those glorious days, they have to be revived. And he was upset about independence and about decolonization. And he's saying the Americans have to go back and revive the glory era. And all those Europeans, they clap for him like seals. So why wouldn't Trump talk like that? But that is what the Islamic Revolution was about. It was so that the United States would never again dictate terms to the Iranian people. And it's not going to ever happen again. And I think after what Iran does to the United States in this war, a lot of other countries are no longer going to be listening, or they're not going to be listening to Trump. They'll ignore him increasingly, and they will defy him more than before. I think we're going to see big changes across the globe after Iran deals the United States with a decisive defeat, a decisive strategic defeat. It's already happened. The United States has already been defeated, but it hasn't sunk in yet.
Yeah, one of the main points that Kamal Kharrazi said in his interview, that the problem between the United States and Iran is more related to the economy. When it comes to the solution, not the problem, to the solution to the conflict, the economy could solve that, could bring some sort of sanity to the whole situation. He's talking about the Strait of Hormuz. Do you see Iran implementing the same policies that Yemenis and Ansarullah were doing in the Red Sea? Letting Chinese tankers pass in and the other no pass to the other countries. How to be selective in their policies in the Strait of Hormuz? How do you see that?
Yes, it's quite possible that for now on that's how it's going to be. Even after the war ends, the Iranians have said that in future they're planning to take money for each ship that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. If they want security, because they have to pay for what they've done to the Iranian people. So we sort of like a toll booth, something like that, where they have to pay. Everything has changed. Nima, Iran is very self-confident. When they were saying your country will fall apart, Ayatollah Khamenei said, no, we have faith in God. We are on the right side. We are on the side of the oppressed, and we are steadfast, and we will defeat the enemy. Many ordinary Iranians believed that. Many were doubtful. Now, not just Iranians across the world, people are stunned. 12 days. The combined forces of the U.S. brought everything it has in the region. The entire West. The French want to bring their aircraft carrier. The British, everyone's, but they can't defeat Iran. They can't defeat the axis of resistance. And so people now, those who were worried, they now feel much more confident. I told you when I went to Engelov Street yesterday and they were bombing nearby, intentionally to create great fear, people didn't budge. I mean, there's footage of that out there. I tweeted something actually, not my own footage, but from Iranian TV when they were. It's just quite stunning. So the Strait of Hormuz is well protected by Iran, and if the United States and its allies carry out an assault, they will have heavy casualties. But have no doubt that Iran will not allow any oil or gas to go through. And if necessary, Iran will destroy all the tankers and then all the installations to make sure that the United States does not get its way. Does Iran want that to happen? No. Iran wants the Strait of Hormuz to be open, for it to be a strait for prosperity for Iranians, for the people of the region, and beyond. But we are where we are because of Netanyahu and the Zionists and his sidekick Trump.
How much
so we'll have to see how things play out.
Yeah. How much is Europe involved in the current attacks on Iran and in the attacks so far? Because they're telling us that their moves mostly defensive. They're trying to defend Cyprus, for example. But what do we know about their collaboration with the United States and Israel in the attacks that are happening?
All US bases, all NATO bases are being used to help the United States. Here, the Greek government and the Turkish government are allies. They're together. They are both assisting this aggression. Anything, all NATO bases and all NATO countries that all NATO member states, they're all involved. No one is, except for the case of, I think, Spain, which refused, I think, to cooperate. I don't know how that ended. I haven't been following the news. But beyond that, they're all involved. I mean, Greece, Cyprus, Turkey, and Italy, the British, the French, the Germans, they're all involved. Don't believe a word that they say. Just like these regimes in the Persian Gulf, when they say that we're neutral, don't believe a word that they say. They're not neutral. They're complicit.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Marandi, for being with us today. Great pleasure.
Thank you,
as
Nima.
always. These are sad times that we talk. And
these are dark times, very dark times. The clouds over Tehran, the clouds of burning fuel over Tehran were sort of symbolic of this darkness. But I told you before the program that the winds came and the rain came and the skies in Tehran are clear today. Yeah. The sun will shine and the empire will fail. And whether people like me survive or not, Iran will remain, the Islamic Republic of Iran will remain, and the axis of resistance will remain, and the Israeli regime will be a diminished regime, and the empire will be a diminished empire. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Marandi.
Thank you, Nima.